Thank you, Congresswoman. Again, whistleblowers have played such a vital role across so many different issues. One prominent example goes back to the 2014 VA waitlist scandal. POGO actually played a very instrumental role coordinating with Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. At that time, we received tips and whistleblower disclosures from over 800 different individuals talking about the VA subjecting veterans to extensive wait times in order to get the basic standard of care that they deserve. It's certainly prolonged serious illnesses, even contributing to hastened deaths, and we were able to help shed more light on that issue, which I think just emphasizes the importance, even outside of the national security context. We are often still talking about serious issues and even life and death concerns. And
unfortunately, whistleblowers whistleblowing can lead to serious repercussions and retaliation, especially in this vindictive and lawless administration. Mr. Spielberger, in the past, what kinds of retaliation have they faced, and what are we seeing today under the Trump administration?
So we've certainly heard about a number of different examples of retaliation. One that I'd like to highlight that Mr. Borland referenced previously is retaliation through abuse of the security clearance process. That can have grave implications not just for a whistleblower, but also their ability to seek legal counsel and defend themselves against retaliation. And when we look at the past several months of this administration, unfortunately, we've seen a really systematic approach toward dismantling the nonpartisan civil service. We've seen the mass firings. We've seen undermining of independent agency watchdogs, mass firings of inspectors general, undermining the Office of Special Counsel, the Merit Systems Protection Board. Again, these entities that are meant to be independent and play a critical role in investigating whistleblower disclosures and ensuring that their rights are protected.
Yeah. Thank you. In 1989, Congress passed the Whistleblower Protection Act and then broadened it again in 2012 to ensure that federal workers could feel free to come forward to their elected officials. And it's a good thing we did, because whistleblowers have played a more important role than ever since Trump has taken office. It was thanks to a whistleblower that we learned that DOJ allegedly put every single American's personal security information at risk by bypassing safeguards and copying all this data to an unsecure server. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a New York Times article titled, quote, "DOJ put critical Social Security data at risk," whistleblower says.
Good to go.
Thanks. We've had whistleblowers at the National Labor Relations Board reveal that DOJ minions may have shipped case files outside of the agency, possibly to help then co-president Elon Musk continue to exploit his workers. And last week, whistleblowers at the National Institute of Health came forward to say that RFK Jr.'s vaccine misinformation campaign had pervaded even the highest levels of the agency. Typically, whistleblowers have an inspector general they can rely on to investigate their claims and register issues with agency leadership. But President Trump has fired or demoted over 20 inspectors general. If I may ask one more question, Mr. Spielberger, can you explain how eroding the independence and capabilities of inspectors general further endanger these whistleblowers?
Absolutely. So again, whistleblowers already face incredibly great challenges in coming forward under normal circumstances. And when we erode these entities that are expected and required to enforce whistleblower protections, fairly investigate their disclosures, it calls into question the integrity of their investigations and findings, whether they'll take whistleblowers seriously when they come forward, and whether we can trust that they will use their authority to enforce the protections of whistleblowers who do come forward, essentially whether they will continue in their role as an independent watchdog or basically become a lapdog for a current or future president.
Thank you. And I will take no more liberties. I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Crane for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Chairwoman, for holding this hearing. Thank you to the witnesses for appearing. In the effort of transparency here, I got to admit to the witnesses that, growing up, I really never believed in UFOs or any of this stuff. I always thought it was a little kooky and whatnot, but after hearing your testimony from honorable service members, watching videos like my colleague, Mr. Burleson, just presented, I got to admit, I've become a believer. Not that I know where these things come from or, what they really are up to, but I'd like to start with asking the witnesses. Mr. Nusatelli, you were in the Air Force, right?
Yes.
Did you believe in UFOs prior to your encounter?
I've always been interested.
Okay.
Yes.
Chief Wiggins, you're currently in the Navy, is that correct?
Correct.
Did you believe in UFOs before your encounter?
I did. I'm from Las Vegas, and I've watched George Knapp my whole life.
Okay. What about you, Mr. Borland?
I have always been open to where facts go, so.
Were you guys scared or hesitant to come forward and tell your story because of fear and believing that you might be reprimanded or ostracized from society because of your stories? Mr. Nusatelli?
Yes, absolutely. I probably would not have come forward if I didn't have documentation to prove some of my story, and I also wouldn't have come forward without the people that paved the way for us in the first congressional hearing. So,
Chief, what about you?
Once I got the okay from the Navy from top down, that gave me a level of relief. Prior to that, I didn't have any thought left or right of that, but thank the Navy to give me the go-ahead, and that gave me the relief that I would not have any level of reprisal or anything happen to me.
Mr. Borland, how about you?
Absolutely. I mean, after I went through everything, it was pretty clear that I caused a major issue in the executive branch, so I did what I was supposed to do, and that's why I haven't spoken publicly. That's why I'm happy to be here. This is how I wanted this to be done in regards to me.
Mr. Borland, why do you think that you faced reprimand and discipline for your effort to come forward and be transparent about what you saw?
About what I saw is the reason why I got into what I know and has been disclosed to AARO and the IG, and I think that information, well, it was labeled an extremely sensitive national security issue.
Thank you. Mr. Knapp, I've watched many of your videos on Joe Rogan and other places. One of the big questions, I think, for many of us is why do you believe that the federal government refuses to be transparent about this issue?
I think there's probably multiple reasons. At the start, when these things first started invading our skies in large numbers, we were scared. It was right after World War II, and we didn't know what they were, and they didn't want to panic the public, and that was probably a good call. Over time, I think the lying sort of became institutionalized, Flights over Washington, D.C. in 1952, they're seen, they're captured on radar, jets are chased after these objects, and then we get an explanation it was a temperature inversion. And those kind of lies have been told for a long time. What was told to me by an investigator from Congress, a guy named Richard D'Amato, who was sent after this story by Robert Byrd and Harry Reid, he came out to Nevada, tried to get into Area 51, did get in there, looked around, talked to people, trying to get to the bottom of it. He believed that this program, reverse engineering, et cetera, was had been moved inside these corporations. And he said, when this comes out, people are going to go to prison. And he meant people who were basically misusing legitimate national security funds, tens of billions of dollars, in order to keep this cover-up going. I also believe there's a legitimate reason for the cover-up in that there is undeniable connection of national security involved in this technology. If we are racing for it to master that technology against the Russians and the Chinese, which is what I have been told by Senator Reid and many others, then it is a race that's critical to our survival. There could be a form of disclosure, I think. Yes, it's real. It's from somewhere else without revealing all the details that would allow someone else to have an advantage in the race for this technology.
Thank you. Finally, I'd like to enter into the testimony a letter I sent to the DOD regarding the case of Major David Charles Grush, a UAP whistleblower who's been extremely helpful to this committee. Unfortunately, due to his participation in the disclosure of UAP, he suffered reprisal like the removal of his clearance, denial of promotion, and loss of medical retirement. I wrote the DOD on July 24th, 2025. on behalf of Major Grush, and I'm still waiting for a reply. I appreciate any help the committee can offer to get a response. Thank you. I yield back.
Without objection, we'll be following up with the DOD after this hearing. Thank you, Representative Crane. I'd next like to recognize Representative Gill for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Luna, for holding this hearing, and I'd like to yield a minute of my time to you.
Perfect. My first question is to Mr. Knapp. Mr. Knapp, how do we know that the files that you obtained from the former Soviet government are not BS and just given to you as a disinformation campaign against the U.S. government?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I shared some of them with the Senate Intelligence Committee when I first got back because that was requested by the Russians who shared some of that information with me. Secondly, I gave all of that material to the DIA through BASS, the OSAP program. Sorry for the acronyms.
Can you name names real quick? Sorry.
At BASS or OSAP?
Who did you give them to directly?
I gave them to Robert Bigelow and to Jim Lukatsky. And they hired a whole team to go through them and retranslate them and analyze it, and they created a structure of how the UFO programs in the USSR and Russia were put together. They said they were real. The other person who said they were real is David Grush.
Noted. Thank you. Representative Gill.
Yep. And thank you. I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Eric Burleson.
Thank you, Representative Gill. Mr. Wiggins, Chief Wiggins, in your view, what mechanisms, such as internal protocols, witness debriefings, or cross-agency documentation, should be better established in order to ensure that such a credible sighting, like the one that you have given, are preserved and made available to oversight bodies like this?
Thank you, sir. As a active duty Navy member, our mission is to carry out the ship's mission or the command's mission. And we, on a general basis, don't have knowledge of what to do when we see things like this. We just don't. We're there to do our mission and do what's told of us, right? So I think what would be important is giving active duty members a clear way of being able to report things like this to where it gets to this point. And ensuring that we have a standard level of understanding that there wouldn't be any level of reprisal or anything happening. Because, I've been in the Navy for almost 24 years, but what about the sailors that have been in for 2 years that experience things like this? They're not going to have the knowledge, or they'll probably be a little bit more fearful to speak up, being it that their career is just starting.
Yeah, I want to commend you. You're the first witness to come forward that is currently serving, and it's recognized. And so I thank you. And your testimony is unbelievable. Let me ask this question: are you familiar with the Witness Protection Act that Representative Burchett has filed?
I'm not too familiar, sir.
Anyone on the committee familiar with it? It's fantastic. It's the language that we need. It's language that will protect whistleblowers from any kind of reprisal, and yet it's again and again blocked by this body in some way. Many a times it's being blocked not by elected officials but by staff behind the scenes. And the other bill, the UAP Disclosure Act, which was filed last year, Senator Schumer, who I cannot believe that there's a topic that he and I agree on, but he and I agree on this topic. He has sponsored it in the Senate. He put it on the National Defense Authorization Act last year. Remarkably, I can't get it it was stripped out by the House last year, and I can't get it onto the bill leaving the House this year. Mr. Knapp, how far would that bill go to actually getting the answers that we need?
Pretty far. I think that they're still going to have roadblocks. The keepers of the secrets, the private companies that have been doing this job for intelligence agencies for a long time, are not going to cough it up. You'd have to force it out of them. And whether you can get them to admit that they have it or not, they're supposed to lie about it. They've been lying about it. More power to you. I hope it works. I hope it passes this time. But it's a daunting challenge to get them to open up after lying about it for more than 75 years.
Yeah. And then finally, Mr. Borland, when you engaged with AARO in 2023, you noted that their public statements did not match the reality that you and others had witnessed. In your assessment, what were the key limitations of AARO?
You know, I would put it to you this way. The statement AARO has made is scientific evidence of extraterrestrials. Scientific evidence requires a scientific control. Extraterrestrial is an entity on another planet. The only way to scientifically prove extraterrestrial is we have to go to that planet, acquire technology, bring it back, and compare it to what we have here.
So you're saying they won't let anything out because, or they won't come forward unless they confirm that unless they go to the planet and confirm where its origin is?
That would be scientific evidence, yes. And by that statement, AARO found no scientific evidence of extraterrestrials is basically, I don't want to call it a psyop, but a misrepresentation, because we do have things. But making that statement is not technically a lie. It's a misrepresentation of the full truth.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I, just since we're on that topic real quick, how do we get to these other planets? How do we pass the Van Allen radiation belt safely?
Good question for you. I cannot answer that for you.
I would now like to recognize Mr. Perry for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think I'll start with maybe Mr. Borland. So you have a clearance, right? You're in uniform, you have a clearance. When did you leave service? What year?
I left in 2013, February
2013.
2013.
Who was the president, if you recall?
2013 would have been President Obama, sir.
Wasn't President Trump, right?
No, sir.
Okay, so you have a clearance, right? You're serving in uniform, you have a clearance.
Yes,
Your
sir.
story, you know, I think many of us are kind of picturing the scene. You walk out in the flight line, having a smoke, this event occurs. Do you have the perception, at least I do, based on your story, that this involves the U.S. government? Whatever you saw involves the U.S. government.
That is 100% my opinion then and now.
And was there an after action? Do you do a daily debrief of the activities of the day? Was any of that recorded? Was there a conversation with the command? Was there any documentation that you know of at the time?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, like I said, I talked about it on the ops floor, and a couple of people had pulled me aside, some older enlisted, and were like, you probably want to keep that to yourself.
So did you get the impression that they knew what you were talking about, just didn't want you to harm your career or seem crazy, or that they didn't really witness? Did you know anybody else that witnessed what you saw?
Again, not that night. Like I said, the only people that would have been out there would have been security forces, and then those of us that were doing ops.
Security forces in uniform or contract?
Probably both.
Did you talk to them? Did anybody talk to them in an after action?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Was there any interest in the command to determine and verify what you saw?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
It's unfortunate. Chief Wiggins, thank you for your service. Gentlemen, thanks all of you for your courage to be here. Your story's a little bit different. Sounds like it, well, for both of you guys, and also Mr. Nusatelli, if this were sanctioned by the U.S. government, even though you have a clearance, but it's classified above the clearance level, do you see any reason why they would allow you access, being present, viewing it, hearing it, you know, being around it? Like, what is this, an accident? Like, does the U.S. government make these kind of accidents? They make accidents, mistakes like this? Like, we're doing this test of this new system, and we forgot these guys were standing here. Does that sound like something that the U.S. government would do?
No, sir. Some of the launches we were doing were like $5 billion projects that had taken like 10 years to develop the technology. And these objects were coming right up to the launch pad. So any kind of mistake, I mean, it could cause a catastrophe.
Right.
So it's very confusing why these objects would be operating in and around our bases or during training exercises.
So it would lend you to believe that the U.S. government had nothing to do with whatever it is you saw.
Correct.
They wouldn't want it there because it would potentially interrupt the proceedings at the time. Was there an after action? Was there a discussion by your command? Was there an investigation? It's pretty significant activities that you were involved in. Was there an investigation that you know of?
We conducted investigations in real time,
Right.
and we document all the evidence. But as far as anything from higher up, I don't know if there was an investigation done. No information came down on what we should
Were
do
you
to
ever
mitigate
interviewed at someone else's request?
about that incident?
Yeah, about the incident.
I don't believe so.
Do you think you find that odd? If something happens, you're around multi-million, maybe billion-dollar operations and launches of national security interests, very sensitive. There's an anomaly in the operation.
The only person witnessed it, saw a UAP at Vandenberg at that time frame, that was interviewed was the one that witnessed the thing land.
Why wouldn't, well, I don't know why I'm asking you, but it seems to me that we would want to interview everybody associated, even not associated, to find out if they were associated. Chief Wiggins, how about you? Was there an investigation? Was there an after action? Was there documentation on the incident that you were privy to?
No, sir, not that I know of. And in my previous experience as an operations specialist, all operations that I've been a part of have been deliberate. So
yeah,
they're
and deliberate operations. After the operation, you conduct an after-action review, or that's what the Army calls it. I don't know what I imagine the Navy has something similar to determine your weaknesses, your successes. Do you do that in regard to this incident?
No, sir. The Navy calls it after-action reports, and not to my knowledge was there an after-action report of this incident, sir.
It's unfortunate. Thank you, Chair. I yield.
I now recognize Mr. Biggs for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I'll tell you that today's testimony should alarm every American, no matter their views on UAPs. This isn't simply about UAPs. It's about government integrity, responsible use of taxpayer funds, and Congress's constitutional duty to oversee the executive branch. We've heard evidence of critical information hidden in special access programs, off limits to virtually every elected representative, and certainly to the public. Credible witnesses report retaliation for speaking out. These are clear attempts to silence those who are exposing the truth. We must protect the whistleblowers. And decades of government disinformation have eviscerated public trust. So this isn't a partisan matter. It's a constitutional matter. And when you talk about the VAs, Ms. Spielberger, and all the problems that they had, the hub of that was Phoenix. And they went after the whistleblowers there. And that was under the Obama administration. So it doesn't matter which administration, which party, both parties have got to come clean, particularly on this. So if the government thinks it can hide the truth and punish those who speak out, Congress has to keep pushing until the facts, whatever they are, wherever they lead, come to light. I'm going to go to you, Mr. Knapp, first. You've interviewed numerous UAP whistleblowers over the years. Question is, how do you verify their claims before deciding they're credible enough to report on?
It's a combination of factors. First, you check their credentials. Did they really serve where they said they did, and did they work where they said they did? Are there any other witnesses? Is there visual proof, film, footage, things of that sort? You ask the people around them that know them, that used to work with them, if they're credible people. That's one way. You know, I think about AARO, the organization that this body created to deal with witnesses and whistleblowers. I hope I'm not taking too much of your time here, but they invited people to come forward, service members who knew, saw things and had experiences. And I can tell you that the people that I have talked to who went through that are deeply disappointed. There was a guy named Bob Jacobs who was a lieutenant attached to Vandenberg in 1964. His unit would record missile tests. They recorded all of them. On one of these particular tests, a UFO comes out of nowhere, zaps what looks like a laser beam at what would have been a nuclear dummy, a nuclear weapon, and disabled it. And he is called into the commander's office. Two guys in suits clip that film footage out that shows the UFO, and he's ordered to never talk about it. He comes forward to AARO. He heeds the call, thinking he's doing his duty as an American to tell that story, and they completely dismissed him. They made up a story that they had tracked down the original footage, and there was nothing like that in it. Well, there was no original footage. It had been taken away the day the footage was recorded. He's deeply disappointed. People like Bob Salas, who had worked at a nuclear ICBM base, who saw UFOs flying over the base and these missile silos were taken down. He went to AARO too and was completely disregarded. It almost looks like AARO operated as a counterintelligence operation to get people to come in, tell their stories, and then discredit all of them. I can't imagine that any whistleblower or witness will ever go to AARO again because of what happened under the first director, who's now long gone, but still seems to act as the spokesperson for that organization.
And I would say, Madam Chair, maybe at some point we need to really dig deep into AARO, and I would encourage us.
Oh, I'd be happy to send maybe a subpoena to Mr. Kilpatrick.
That'd be fun. Mr. Nucatelli, you've testified that official Air Force records of the Red Square incident are now held by AARO and the FBI. Has Congress or you been denied access to those records, and on what grounds would we be denied access, you or us?
No, the records are unclassified, so
okay,
provide them to.
In the 2003 to 2005 incidents you described, were any physical effects, electromagnetic interference, radio anomalies, or security system disruptions documented in base logs or any reports, official reports?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Mr. Wiggins, has the full resolution unedited footage of your incident been provided to Congress?
Yes.
Okay. Were you or your crew ever instructed formally or informally not to document or discuss the event? Ever?
No.
Good. Mr. Borland, you've talked about manipulation of your security clearance records. Can you identify which agencies or offices were responsible and whether they provided any written justification?
I can do that in a skiff, sir, 100%. Because of being a part of a multi-agency special access program, I cannot give those publicly.
So I'd encourage us, Madam Chair, to have that skiff meeting if we can. And then, Mr. Borland, again for you. You testified that you withheld certain sources and methods from AARO due to mistrust. Can you give us some specifics that led you to believe they were misrepresenting the truth?
Well, as I said already, what I said about scientific methods, scientific control, extraterrestrials, I mean, I know what I've seen, I know what I know, and I know it's true. So any agency that's going to go public and try and manipulate the public perception of this subject in such a way that it is negative when I know the truth about it is why I had extreme reservations with it, and also what I've been through and other whistleblowers and people in the know about this subject have been through.
So, Madam Chair, thank you for letting me wave on. I think the key thing there you talked about was manipulation of message, manipulation of narrative. That is really the problem with this entire the system that we've seen since you've started these wonderful hearings, Madam Chair, and I thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Biggs. The chair would now like to recognize Mr. Begich for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First question, Mr. Borland, earlier today you mentioned that in a skiff you would be able to discuss whether a member of Congress is actually legally able to access certain information. Under what authority would a member of Congress be restricted from accessing information on this topic, even within a skiff?
I would suggest reaching out to Director Gabbard and speaking with her about that. I'm hopeful that this goes back to the executive branch and who even has authority. Unfortunately, I can't give you a 100% solid answer because I don't even have that knowledge.
Next question to George Knapp. What is the estimated annual budget, your view, for the program for investigating or reverse engineering UAP-related technology, including official, misappropriated, or black budget funds?
I wouldn't have a clue. I don't know of any person that's ever seen it.
Does anyone on this panel wish to address that question? Okay, moving on. Are any of you willing to name specific gatekeepers within the root cell of the UAP-SAP Federation?
You mean specific people and contractors that have dealt with this and kept the secret?
Specific individuals.
Well, one of them was named Dr. James Ryder at Lockheed. But, you know, again, to emphasize, I don't fault these contractors for doing what they were asked to do by our government. They're supposed to lie if people ask about it. And the intelligence agencies who gave this stuff to them, CIA, I think primarily, told them to keep it quiet, and they've done that. And I suspect that they'd like an off-ramp, that they'd like some help with figuring out this technology at some point.
And this is, again, available to anyone, is there a security classification guide for UAP or NHI?
I remember in the 2003 or 2023 hearing, it was stated that all UAP-related material is classified secret or above.
I have a name for you.
Go ahead.
Glenn Gaffney, CIA.
Glenn Gaffney, CIA. Another question for you, Mr. Knapp. What is, in your view, having investigated this issue for so many years, what is the long game with respect to disclosure of this information to the public? Because with the advent of essentially a video camera and a high megapixel phone in everybody's pocket, at some point, this information is going to be impossible to withhold from the public. What do you think is the long game here?
Well, the secret's out. I mean, how many videos have there been already? You know, videos that are leaked from within the military and intelligence agencies and contractors and sensor platforms. It's out there. But they have the high ground. The people that don't want us to take it seriously dismiss it, discredit the witnesses, come up with a cover story. I mean, it's been out there a long time. The public senses that it's real, and the people in authority dismiss them. It's a game that's been going on a long time, and I don't think they're ever going to release it. I think that there's an attitude among the people that have been involved in this for a long time that the public doesn't deserve to know, and that the public probably can't handle it, but they can.
Final question, again, this one's open to anyone who'd like to answer it. Describe your understanding of the org chart or lines of control within the executive branch with respect to these topics. And if you'd like to address that in a skiff, feel free to say so.
That could work as long as I'm legally allowed to and you are legally allowed to receive it.
I think these programs are in the executive branch, National Security Council and over on that side. That seems to be what some of our witnesses have told us over the years. So you can, Congress can file all kinds of requests. The FOIAs can be filed with the Department of Defense, Department of War now, and they can honestly say, well, we don't have it, because they don't have it.
Thank you. Is there anything in my remaining 30 seconds that you'd like to share on any of these questions that I've asked you today?
And I applaud the committee for trying to tackle this monster of an issue. I really appreciate that it might be the only bipartisan issue in Washington where everybody can agree. We've watched multiple hearings now. Everyone is asking the same kind of questions, whether right or left, and honestly want the answers. And Chairman Luna, Chairwoman Luna, I appreciate your dedication to this, Tim Burchett and the other members, for sticking with it, because it's come up in Congress before, and they had hearings, and then they dropped it for 50 years. So it's going to take a lot of time to get to the bottom of this, and I applaud your commitment to getting to the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9C.
Madam Chair, can I ask a parliamentary question of you?
Yeah, sure.
Does this subcommittee have the authority to do subpoenas?
Task force. So the task force, to answer that question, has to do it through full committee.
Okay.
So, and also in regards to immunity, which to Mr. Borland's point, we are going to be doing a motion to ask for immunity for you and a few other people to come into a skiff and tell us what you know without being subject to the Espionage Act, et cetera.
Thank you, ma'am.
So that's just kind of an update. But as a task force, because we are not a full subcommittee and there are certain authorities that haven't been granted to us, probably because they don't want us to have it. But there are ways to work around it, so we're kind of figuring that out. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9C, the majority and minority will have an additional 30 minutes each to ask questions of the witnesses without objection. So ordered. With that being said, if you guys want to jump in the queue, I know Representative Crane, Burleson, and likely Burchett have a few more questions. I'll just start out with two, and then I'll pass the buck to Burleson. Burchett, do you have anything? Yeah. Burchett and then Crane. Just real quick, Mr. Knapp, and short answers, please, because of time. How much of these alleged Russian crash retrieval documents have already been physically out there? So, I mean, percentage-wise of the documents that you submitted to Congress, what was public already and what was not newly released?
Maybe 1%.
Okay, so the rest of it should be predominantly new information.
Yep.
Also, can you just elaborate real quick? I know you had, I think, mentioned a Thread 3 program, but also alleged in those documents, I got through maybe half of them last night. There's a lot, and I don't speak Russian, contrary to what my people might allege. What does the Thread 3, was there any specific programs that existed within the Soviet government or groups to specifically investigate this by name real quick?
It's a number. There's a number in those documents I gave you. There was a larger program that actually had 3 sub-programs that was, Thread 3 was the name I got, and then the DIA guys who looked at it figured out there was a much larger organization.
And it's listed in those documents?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Real quick, I'd like to ask the committee to replay that video that Burleson had played earlier. I want to ask every witness here, specifically ones that have sensor training or have been able to recognize some of this movements real quick. So if you guys can please roll that real quick. Okay, while this is still rolling, Mr. Nusatelli, real quick yes or no answers. Are you aware of anything in the government, United States government arsenal that can split a Hellfire missile like this?
No.
And do whatever blob thing it did and then keep going? Nothing?
Nothing.
All right, how about you, Chief Wiggins?
Nothing to my knowledge, ma'am.
Okay, and how about you, Mr. Borland?
I prefer to answer that in a skiff.
Okay, does this video scare you guys? Yes or no?
Yes.
Wiggins?
Yes.
Nat?
I had a different reaction. I was really happy that it got out. Thanks for providing
Curiosity
that,
kills the cat. All right, Mr. Borland?
Yes, for...
Okay. All right, that is the end of my questioning. I'd like to now recognize Mr. Crane.
Thank you. Chief, I was on a ship for a little bit. I was a gunner's mate on the USS Gettysburg for a couple of years. My question to you is, when you had your encounter and you saw it on the screen, you were in the CIC, is that correct?
That's correct. On an LCS ship, the CIC is on the bridge, so it's called ICC-1, but yes, same.
Did a bunch of the other folks in the CIC come and check out what you were looking at?
Yes, we all did. The tactical action officer, myself, the RCO, and 2 others that were on watch. We were all in the same space, so we were all looking at the Sapphire screen all at the same time.
Because in the other couple instances with the witnesses, you guys just saw it by yourself. Is that correct? Mr. Borland, you saw it by yourself?
For me, yes, sir.
Mr. Nusatelli, you saw this by yourself?
No, there were multiple witnesses in every case at Vandenberg.
Okay. So, Chief, did that spread like wildfire throughout the ship in the next day or two, what you guys had seen?
No, sir. It didn't spread throughout the ship, but it spread throughout ICC-1 conversation. As you do your turnover, we talk about it. But it didn't go further than just the watchstanders that stood watch on the bridge and in ICC-1. So it did move around there throughout a few days.
I'm kind of surprised. Stuff usually spreads around the ship pretty fast. Why do you think the rest of your fellow sailors on the boat didn't hear about it?
Potentially uninterest, possibly, with engineers or combat systems like yourself, don't make their way up to the bridge enough to get within sight of the circle of talk about the incident.
Was it hard for you to get permission from the Navy to bring that video?
I myself didn't bring the video. I just saw the video. When I saw the video, I got in touch with Admiral Gallaudet. That's how I wind up knowing about the video itself when I first talked to the Admiral. And you can hear my voice at the back end of the video, and I was like, hey, that's my voice, and I wanted to talk about it.
How long did that encounter take place, Chief?
So the encounter itself, from the time I recognized on my radar to the time after the video ends was probably about 5 to 7 minutes.
What speed was the object moving at?
When I first witnessed off the port bridge wing the object moving out of the water, what I thought was originally just a light on the water, something on the horizon, and surfacing and going into the air, I then knew it was an air contact. But as an air controller myself, I started thinking and going through kind of like my checklist in my mind. Could it be a helo? But it's not blinking lights. So I then realized this is something I've never seen before. So the speed itself, just going from the horizon to about maybe 4,000 feet in the air, was very slow, slowly rising. And then it sped up. I'm not an expert at knowing specific speeds of aircraft just by visual eye, but I would say probably 1-2 Mach instantly into the rest of the formation. I didn't notice visually with my own eyes the other 3 objects until I went back to my radar and also utilized Sapphire to see that, in fact, there were 4 total. And then again, when they all left after a certain amount of time, it was nearly instantaneous.
So you spotted it visually first, Chief, and then went back to your radar, or did you guys spot it on radar first?
Radar first, because that was my watch station.
And then you went out to the port bridge wing, is that correct?
Correct, to verify what I saw on my radar.
What range was it at, Chief, when you were able to see it visibly?
I would say about 7 nautical miles, 7 to 8 nautical miles of a light from the ship.
Wow. Thank you. I yield back.
I now recognize Mr. Burleson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chief Wiggins, you said that it emerged from the ocean. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And before it did, it was glowing. It was a glowing object under the water.
That part I couldn't tell because it was nighttime at 1915 approximately, and it was also at a distance. So it's very hard to tell the difference between something on the horizon and something surfacing from the water. My personal thoughts after seeing what I saw is that it did in fact come from the water, but I don't have visual evidence showing exactly, that it did in fact come from the water. But I had to go through my process of elimination and try to figure out, was this a ship on the horizon just showing its lights at night, but to see it surface, then it made me question, okay, where did this come from? If it's flying and it's not a drone or anything like that, where was its origin? Where did it start?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Knapp, in your testimony and in this document, you detail an event that happened in Russia where their nuclear missiles were activated, and we were close to a World War III at that time, which is startling to hear. It's also good to know that as we have investigated the JFK files as well, that we're learning that there was a document that was sent between Russia. There was an agreement between Russia and the United States that if they were to see some unidentified objects over sensitive sites, that they would report it to each other. Are you familiar with that document?
Yes, I'm also familiar with the rhetoric, public rhetoric between President Reagan and Gorbachev at the time, too, that they traded statements about, wouldn't it be something if we were threatened by something from way outside, how we might work together. I know for sure that they had conversations about it, and I know we did reach an agreement to try to lessen the possibility that us detecting a UFO or group of UFOs would not be mistaken for a bunch of Russian missiles. There were exchanges of that sort that went back and forth.
Yeah, and I can imagine this is, to me, the validity of this document is underscored by the fact that Russia would not want this to be known. They absolutely would not want to know, the public to know, or the United States to know, that there was a vulnerability in their missile systems. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And, and we had many similar incidents at our nuclear weapons facilities here that have all been sort of swept under the rug. But it's pretty scary when you take down 10 missile silos during tense times and you don't have a better explanation for it than it was a special test of security mechanisms or using EMPs, which is a preposterous explanation.
Real quick, we're going to cut to Mr. Ogles. He just got back. So we're in a special kind of lightning round, so 5 minutes, and then we'll go back to our line of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, at this point, I think it's clear from the hearing that there's advanced technologies that are taking place in our airspace. You know, the question is, and I posed it in one of the previous hearings, is it ours, is it theirs, or is it otherworldly? There may not be a silver bullet at the moment, but when you look back through the hearing and the evidence that's been presented, if you're going to point the American people to one piece of evidence to start their journey on this topic, what would you suggest, sir?
One piece of evidence. I would start with this hearing, in the first hearing. There is no evidence.
But is there a specific, exactly, but is there a specific evidence or footage or document that you think lends extreme credibility to what we're discussing today?
I would say this new video we're seeing today is exceptional evidence that we're dealing with something.
With the kinetic?
Yes.
Mr. Wiggins?
Sir, I'd have to say that if just the average person here in America looked at absolutely everything that has come across television, the internet, etc., you can't tell yourself that 100% of what's being recorded is fake or false. You have to, at some point, understand that there's something else out there.
Well, I mean, and you bring an interesting point. You know, in the law enforcement community, anytime you're conducting an investigation, you're always looking at the totality of the circumstances. You're looking at all the evidence and how they piece together. And so that would be my, advice to the American people, that this is a journey that is just beginning from a congressional perspective, but you have decades of data, some of it not real, much of it is, but thanks to Chairwoman Luna, we're now presenting this to the American people. And I think this latest video from Mr. Burleson is something that should get everyone pause. When you see the three orbs that drop, was that in a defensive posture, or was that in an offensive posture? And what capabilities did those orbs have that we, quite frankly, may not have? Mr. Knapp?
As I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks, what hooked me on the story was the paper trail, these documents that shouldn't exist. We've been told for decades, over and over, there's nothing to it. It's not a threat. You can go about your business. And then when FOIA becomes the law of the land, thousands of pages to the contrary leak out. There's a memo by General Nathan Twining in 1947 when the country was being overflown by dozens of UFOs, hundreds of UFOs, in which he said, look, this is not visionary or fictitious. It's real. These things are craft. They're not ours. They outperform anything we've got. I mean, if you follow the paper trail of documents that they wrote before the military got wise and realized that FOIA really exists and changed their tune and not put things in writing, it spells it out pretty clearly. I'll go refer back to Russia. One incident I did not mention to Representative Burleson is Colonel Sokolov in that Ministry of Defense program said there were 40 incidents where Russian warplanes were sent to intercept UFOs. And they were ordered to fire on them. And for the most part, the UFOs would zip away. 3 of the pilots, though, did fire at these things. Those 3 planes stalled out, crashed. 2 of those pilots died. And after that, the Russians changed the standing order. If you see a UFO, leave them alone. No country in the world wants to say and admit that these objects are flying around in our airspace and there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, who wants to say that? The U.S. certainly doesn't, and the Russians didn't either.
And I've got to be almost out of time, but Mr. Berlin, then you, sir, real quickly.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think Bob Lazar, and not for the reasons that most would talk about, mainly because Bob Lazar was immediately discredited. They said he never worked where he worked. They said he never did what he did. But yet Bob Lazar showed up with a bunch of friends and a video camera and was filming these test flights in the middle of the desert. So clearly he knew something.
Madam Chairman, if I'm out of time, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Representative Ogles. I'd like to go back now on our lightning round of questioning to Representative Burchett and then Burleson. Burchett, always number 1.
As well I should be. Number 1 in your heart, number 435 on the chart. That's me. Dylan, knowing you testified to AARO, are they obfuscating when they claim to have discovered no evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity, or technology, and are they lying to the American public?
As I said before, it's a manipulation of the public perception. The statement, scientific evidence of extraterrestrials, is a true statement. It is not the truth about what is happening and what we have.
Did y'all like to comment on that further? Mr. Knapp, you're getting edgy.
It's splitting hairs. No proof that they're extraterrestrials. What would that proof look like? A piece of kryptonite? What would it be? I mean, we could be talking about different forms of non-human intelligence. I think the dominant paradigm is that they come from outer space, somewhere else, and they have some way that they can cross those vast distances that we can't even imagine doing. But that's not necessarily the answer. So asking for proof of extraterrestrials might not be the answer at all. It's splitting hairs. We don't know where they're from. I don't know anyone who knows the answer for sure. They call them aliens just as a placekeeper kind of a word, but no one in all these programs who've studied this stuff for years, people with much bigger brains than mine, knows the answer for sure.
I've talked to Navy folks that some of the deep sea areas, they think there might be something there, that they're here, and I don't know when they got here. Another point that needs to be made is every time, we say we're going to back engineer or whatever you want to call it, these craft, I always say, like, it'd be like if you took I ride motorcycles, but if you took like an Indian or a Harley to the people that came over here on the Mayflower, they'd see a bright, shiny object. They might polish it. They might get it started. I doubt they could. They couldn't work on it. They couldn't put fuel. They wouldn't be able to have the capability of putting fuel in it. I just think that's we're scratching at something that we don't have any knowledge of, and that's why it's just taken so dadgum long. But they do know, first one that cracks that code, it's over. I mean, it's energy, it's power, it's everything. And I worry too that in the wrong hands that they do that, they keep it from the rest of us because they're so invested in whatever energy sources we have here that their billionaire buddies are going to profit, and they can't retool because they know once it's out on the internet, it's over. And so I think there's a lot of things going after, and I think that's why the move to discredit folks is so rapid too. I think they point to them and they put the dogs on them, and it disgusts me.
There's a price to be paid for that too. The Russians and Chinese are trying to figure this out as well, but they don't have the same kind of stigma. They tell their best scientists and engineers, get in there and work on it. And they've been doing it for a very long time, might have a head start on us. Here, we don't have our best scientists and engineers working on it because they've been told it's nonsense. The stigma is very real for people like that.
I agree. Yield back, Chair Lady.
Thank you. I'd now like to recognize Representative Burleson.
Mr. Nusatelli, when you heard the testimony of Mr. Knapp talking about these missiles were shut down or turned on in Russia, does that remind you, when you hear these stories, it's got to remind you of the event that happened on your base?
Absolutely. There are many accounts of incursions of this type taking place. I believe in the 60s we had a similar incursion in New England, and same thing happened. There were these objects coming over the base at low altitude, 200 feet over the base security police, and they were scrambling fighters, and then the objects would just fly off, and that went on for weeks. So the historical record has laid out that there's a pattern, that our installations are visited by these craft. They come in and do whatever they're doing, and then they leave. And we don't know how to respond. We don't know how to protect the installation. So that's why we're here.
When you first heard, and we're having to report on these incidents that were being witnessed by other individuals, did you believe them? Did you yourself believe it would be true until you saw it?
Yeah, these are people I've worked with for years, deployed with. I was in some of their weddings. These are people that I worked with every day of my life. Usually when the events were occurring, we were all together. There'd be 40, 60, 100 people on duty during these encounters.
Really?
Yeah.
All seeing it at the same time?
Yes, these encounters were playing out while we were on duty, and and we were responding and investigating in real time as they occurred.
And as you said, the importance of your operation was highly important because they said it's the most important in 25 years, the research that you were conducting.
For that particular launch, we had 500 Air Force police officers guarding the launch. 500 people. It was that critical.
Wow.
But had this thing showed up, we wouldn't have been able to do anything to prevent it showing up.
Real quickly, can you just re-describe size and whether or not you heard anything? It was how big, wise?
The two square objects were at least as large as a football field. The second encounter, they think it was much larger than a football field. We're talking like flying buildings. The object I saw was about 30 feet in diameter.
And to confirm, you were not the only person that saw this.
Correct.
I think I was also told that there was also reports of this in a police blotter in the area. Can you confirm that?
Yes, that's the documentation that I maintained from the original event and turned into AARO and the FBI.
Okay. Do you have any more, Burleson?
No, Madam Chair, I just want to reiterate to the American people that if you're frustrated, so are we. We're extremely frustrated. We've been, the 2-3 years. I can only imagine how frustrated Mr. Knapp is or Danny Sheehan is, and the amount of time that you guys have poured into this to try to get answers. I mean, Masson is back there. He's been pouring to try to get answers into this. I hope that you all see that we're committed to this, and we're going to be scrappy about it. We may not have the direct authority, but I can assure you Representative Luna is about as scrappy as it gets. I wouldn't want to scrap with her. But that being said, I think that if the American people want to see answers, we need to action. We've had the hearings. It's time to take action. It's time that we pass Tim Burchett's Whistleblower Act. It's time that we pass the UAP Disclosure Act. And I think that we've had a lot of talk about this. It's time for action.
Thank you, Burleson. I would now like to yield 30 minutes to Representative Crockett.
I'll reserve.
Thank you. In closing, I want to thank our witnesses once again for their testimony today. I now yield to Ranking Member Crockett for closing remarks.
I'll pass. No, I just want to say thank you so much to each and every one of you for being here today, for staying committed to this, and for your courage. I truly believe that courage is contagious. And right now, we need more courage than ever, whether it's UAPs or whether we're dealing with any other form of government where people are afraid to come out and speak their truth. The American people are relying on amazing public servants like you to speak up on their behalf, to be the watchdog, and to make sure that we are as safe as possible. And so thank you so much again for conducting a bipartisan hearing on such an important matter.
Thank you. I'd now like to recognize myself for some closing remarks. This is obviously something that doesn't just affect everyone in this room. I can tell you that specifically for where I represent in Pinellas County, Tampa Bay, and Florida as a whole, there's many sightings, many questions, people reporting this, but I'm not the only one. I was also told by Representative Biggs, as well as our great representative from Alaska, that these are not isolated instances, and so it does give us reasoning to provide investigative inquiry into these topics, but also I would also like Mr. Spielberger, if you could actually review and see if your organization would endorse the Whistleblower Protection Act that Representative Burchett has. I can tell you that I will be signing on to a letter, as well as I'm sure many other members of this task force, and we hope that the ranking chairwoman or my colleague here, Representative Crockett, as well as our Democrats that were here today, consider also signing on to that, as we do feel that it is time to ensure that our whistleblowers are given adequate protections and that people like Mr. Borland are not facing retribution in the way that they have been. With that being said, with all that and without objection, all members have 5 legislative days within to submit materials and additional written questions for the witnesses, and which will be also forwarded to those witnesses. If there are no further business, without objection, I'd like to now recognize Representative Burchett for closing remarks.
I would just like to thank the ranking member and the chair lady for their courage. This is a tough issue. We all catch hell for it. And But it's gratifying that we're here in a bipartisan nature and the way this meeting was conducted. And I want to thank y'all for your courage. Thank y'all. And
without objection, the task force stands adjourned. Has been shrouded in secrecy, stigma, and in some case, outright dismissal. Today, I want to state clearly that this is not science fiction or creating speculation. This is about national security, government accountability, and the American people's right to the truth. I have spoken now to a number of whistleblowers from the military, to include the infamous Eglin Air Force Base incident that occurred when myself and former Representative Matt Gaetz, as well as Representative Burchett, followed up on a lead from multiple active duty Air Force pilot whistleblowers that alleged that the United States Air Force was covering up UAP activity at Eglin Air Force Base. We have heard from a number of whistleblowers, specifically military pilots, that the reason for not coming forward publicly is out of fear that speaking out would cost them their flight status and potentially their careers. This is unacceptable. We cannot protect our airspaces if our best trained observers are silenced. We cannot advance science if we refuse to ask questions. And we cannot maintain trust in government if we keep the American people in the dark. Now, Congress has tried to fix this problem. Congress tried to create formal channels through the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, also known as AARO, and the Intelligence Community Inspector General for service members and officials to make disclosures. But the reality, the reports come in are often to brush aside, slow-walked, or met with skepticism rather than serious investigation. Recently, the former AARO director, known as Sean Kilpatrick, attacked our witnesses and members on this committee. It should be noted that he's a documented liar and brings into question what his purpose at AARO really was if it was not to follow up on investigations and disclose his findings to members of Congress. A former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, Chris Mellon, described a report published by AARO that found no evidence that any USG investigation, academic-sponsored research, or official review panel has confirmed any sighting of UAP-represented extraterrestrial technology. As the most error-ridden and unsatisfactory government report I can recall reading during after decades of government service. Mellon further noted that this was a first error report submitted to Congress without the Director of National Intelligence's sign-off and seemingly excluded input from any scholars or experts who have studied or written extensively about this topic, as would normally be in any other case in this field. Mellon determined that this report failed to fulfill the congressional mandate under which it was required, omitted entire agencies with known investigations or activities related to UAPs, and omitted any discussion of efforts to hide classified or unclassified information about UAP. Such efforts were unaddressed by the report, despite the existence of agency records and investigations concurring with them, including those at U.S. Customs and Border Protection. If we set up offices and oversight bodies only to let them become graveyards for testimony, or worse yet, ruses for pretending to investigate when in actuality there was no follow-up, then we are not doing our jobs. In recent months, Congress has also been presented with evidence that points to technologies that, to our knowledge, are beyond our current capabilities. It is our duty as elected representatives to follow the facts wherever they lead and to ensure that those facts are not buried under classification stamps or bureaucratic excuses. Let me be clear, whether UAPs represent adversarial technology, natural phenomena, or something beyond current human understanding, Congress has a responsibility to investigate. If these objects are foreign in origin, then they pose a direct threat to our national security. And if they represent something unknown, they demand rigorous scientific inquiry, not ridicule, not secrecy, and not silence. The stakes are very high. Adversarial nations are not waiting for us to catch up. They are studying these phenomena as well aggressively, as multiple nations have also announced their own parliamentary investigations into this very topic. If we are to continue to hide information from ourselves, we risk strategic surprise. If we continue to ignore our pilots and service members, as well as countless government whistleblowers, we risk losing their trust. And if we continue to shield the truth from the public, we risk eroding the very foundation of democratic accountability. This is why this hearing matters. This is not about fueling speculation. This is about demanding the basic transparency from the Department of Defense and the intelligence community and other military contractors. It is about asking the questions every American has the right to ask. What do we know? What don't we know? And why in a free society are we being told so little? A major barrier to this committee's inquiry into UAPs has been the lack of cooperation and transparency from the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. In preparation for previous UAP hearings, the committee repeatedly asked the Department of Defense to allow members to view videos and files related to UAP incidences. Unfortunately, the Department of Defense notified the committee staff that due to the department's Special Access Program rules, only members of the House Armed Service Committee, as well as the Defense Subcommittee on House Appropriations, also known as HAC-D, were allowed to be read in onto such programs. For a non-committee member to be allowed to view these documents and videos, individual members must be approved by the chairman and ranking member of both HASC and HAC-D. Independent SAP Oversight has presented a consistent problem for Congress, as well as program budgets are classified. Additionally, oversight reporting to Congress is classified and only provided to the authorizing and appropriations committees of jurisdiction. The American people are not fragile. They do not need to be shielded like children from reality. What they cannot tolerate and what they will not forgive is a government that withholds the truth and punishes those who dare to speak up. I want to close with this. Future generations will look back at this moment and ask what we did when presented with the unknown. Did we look away, embarrassed or afraid, or did we pursue the truth with courage? I intend to be on the side of truth, transparency, and accountability, and I hope my colleagues on this task force will be able to do the same. To quote a few elected officials, Senator Schumer has stated, multiple credible sources allege a constitutional crisis over UFOs. Senator Rounds has stated that these are brilliant individuals and they are not making this stuff up. And our current Secretary